She thought $50,000 would save her father's life. She didn't know the man offering it was the reason her father was dying. By the time she discovered the truth, she was already wearing his ring. And she had a choice to make: destroy him, or destroy herself. Like and subscribe for more stories of revenge, redemption, and impossible choices. The gallery was nearly empty when Elara Castellanos locked the door for the last time. Her paintings, bold, angry splashes of color that had once felt like freedom, now felt like tombstones. 6 months. That's how long she'd lasted before the collectors stopped calling, before the rent became impossible, before her art became just another beautiful thing the world didn't need. Her phone buzzed. Vancouver General Hospital. Again. Miss Castellanos, we need to discuss your father's treatment plan. Treatment plan. Such clinical words for, we're going to let him die unless you find $70,000. Elara pressed her forehead against the cold glass of her gallery window, watching Vancouver's elite drift past in their $1,000 coats. Somewhere in this city of rain and glass towers, someone was spending her father's life on a bottle of wine. She didn't notice the black town car pull up. Didn't notice the man stepping out, 6 feet of tailored precision and controlled power. She only noticed when he knocked on her locked door, 3 sharp raps that demanded attention. Dante Blackwood didn't ask to come in. He simply waited with the patience of someone who had never been refused anything. Elara opened the door. We're closed. I know. His eyes, gray as December rain, swept past her to the paintings on the walls. I'm here to make you an offer. I'm not interested in $50,000 for 6 weeks of your time. The number hit her like ice water. Elara's hand tightened on the door. What? Dante stepped inside, his presence filling her small gallery like smoke. I need a fiancé. Temporary. Convincing. Compensated. You're insane. I am desperate. He said it without shame, examining one of her paintings, a violent red canvas she'd titled Rage. My grandfather controls my inheritance through a trust. I don't get access until I'm married or turn 40. He's dying. He wants to see me settled before he goes. So get married. Marriage is permanent. This is business. He turned to face her, and Elara saw something flicker behind those cold eyes. Calculation. You need money. I checked. Your father's medical bills, the gallery debt, your student loans. $50,000 would barely cover it, but it's a start. Elara's stomach turned. You investigated me? I investigate everyone. Dante pulled a contract from his coat pocket. 6 weeks. You attend family dinners, society events, play the devoted fiancé. When my grandfather passes, and his doctors give him 3 months at most, we have a very public, very amicable breakup. You walk away with your money. I get my inheritance. Everyone wins. Except your dying grandfather, who you're lying to. My grandfather spent 40 years building an empire by stepping on people like your father. He'll die happy thinking he controlled me one last time. I call that justice. The words hung in the air between them. People like your father. Elara felt something cold settle in her chest. I need to think about it. You have 24 hours. After that, I find someone else. Dante placed his card on the reception desk. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. My number. Use it. He was gone before she could respond, leaving only the faint scent of expensive cologne, and the weight of an impossible choice. That night, sitting in her father's hospital room while machines breathed for him, Elara stared at Dante Blackwood's card. Her father's face, once so strong, now paper-thin and gray, gave her the answer. She made the call. The Blackwood penthouse occupied the entire 57th floor of a building that had its own Wikipedia page. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Vancouver like a conquered kingdom. Everything was white marble and sharp edges, beautiful, cold, perfect. Just like Dante. The ring. He slid a black velvet box across his glass dining table. Inside, a diamond caught the light and shattered it into 1,000 pieces. Cartier. 2 carats. My grandfather expects nothing less. Elara's hand trembled as she put it on. The weight of it felt like a chain. We need a story, Dante continued, pouring wine she couldn't pronounce. How we met. When I proposed. What you love about me. That last one might be difficult. The ghost of a smile crossed his face. Be creative. You're an artist. They spent 3 hours building their lie. They'd met at a charity auction. He'd bought one of her paintings. They'd connected over a shared love of obscure poetry and Italian wine. He'd proposed on a beach in Tufino at sunset. It was detailed, romantic, completely fabricated. Your grandfather will believe this? Elara asked. My grandfather believes what he wants to believe. As long as you're pretty, cultured, and properly grateful for my attention, he'll accept you. Dante refilled her glass. The first dinner is Friday. Wear something expensive. I'll send a stylist. I don't need. Yes, you do. His eyes raked over her paint-stained jeans and vintage sweater. My world has rules. Follow them, or this won't work. The stylist arrived Tuesday with a rack of designer clothes that cost more than Elara's yearly rent. The hair and makeup team came Wednesday. By Friday, Elara barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Polished, elegant, expensive. Dante's driver picked her up at 7. The Blackwood estate on Vancouver Island was less a house and more a monument to generational wealth. Sprawling grounds, formal gardens. A mansion that belonged in a period drama. Smile. Dante murmured as they walked to the door. You're madly in love with me. I'm a better actress than you think. Good. Because my grandfather is a human lie detector. Marcus Blackwood sat in a wheelchair in a drawing room that smelled of old money and older secrets. At 87 he was all sharp angles and sharper eyes. Those eyes tracked Elara like a predator sizing up prey. So, the artist. His voice carried the rasp of someone arguing with death. Dante tells me you're talented. I try to be, sir. Trying is for failures. Are you a failure, Miss Castellanos? The room went silent. Dante's hand tightened on her waist, a warning. Elara smiled. I prefer to think of myself as a work in progress. Marcus Blackwood studied her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a dry, rattling sound. She's got spine. Better than that insipid Hartford girl you dated. At least this one can think. The dinner that followed was a performance. Elara played her part perfectly, gracious, intelligent, just deferential enough. She laughed at Marcus's stories about building his empire. She asked thoughtful questions. She let Dante's hand rest possessively on her knee under the table. She was good at pretending. She'd been pretending her whole life, that her art mattered, that she wasn't drowning, that she was fine. It wasn't until dessert was served that she saw it. Marcus was showing her old family photographs, pointing out Dante's mother, his late father, the legacy being passed down. And there, in the background of a photo from 15 years ago, a framed newspaper article on the wall. Blackwood Industries acquires Castellanos Technologies. Victor Castellanos steps down. The room tilted. Elara's wineglass stopped halfway to her mouth. My dear, are you all right? Marcus's voice came from very far away. Yes, she forced herself to breathe. Just remembered I forgot to call someone. May I use your restroom? She barely made it down the hall before her legs gave out. Leaning against the wall in a bathroom larger than her apartment, Elara pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Castellanos Technologies. Her father's company. The business he'd built from nothing, poured his life into. The hostile takeover that had destroyed him 10 years ago, triggered his first heart attack, sent their family into a spiral they'd never recovered from. Blackwood Industries. Dante Blackwood. The man she was fake engaged to was the man who had ruined her father's life. Elara stared at her reflection. Designer dress, perfect makeup, stolen diamond on her finger. The woman looking back was a stranger. Good. Because Elara Castellanos had just changed the game. She wasn't here for the money anymore. She was here for revenge. Elara became a ghost in Dante's life, present, attentive, perfect. And while she smiled and played her part, she searched. His penthouse when he worked late. His home office, during their morning coffees. His study, while he took phone calls. She was looking for something, anything she could use to destroy him the way he destroyed her father. Financial records. Business deals. Secrets that could ruin the Blackwood name. She found them all. Dante's files were meticulous. Every acquisition, every hostile takeover, every company absorbed into the Blackwood empire. And there, in a locked drawer she picked with a hairpin and steady hands, she found it. The Castellanos Technologies folder. Elara's hands shook as she photographed every page. The acquisition documents. The board meeting minutes. The emails between Dante's father and the lawyers. The cold calculation of how to dismantle a man's life's work for profit. But something was wrong. The dates were off. These documents were from 15 years ago. Dante would have been 22. Still in college. And every signature, every decision, every ruthless move, they all bore his father's name. Richard Blackwood. Dante hadn't destroyed her father's company. His father had. Elara sat on the floor of his office, documents scattered around her like evidence at a crime scene. The revenge she'd been planning, the public humiliation, the leaked files, the destruction of everything Dante had built, suddenly felt hollow. Find what you were looking for? She spun around. Dante stood in the doorway, still in his suit from dinner, his face unreadable. I can explain. Can you? He stepped inside, closing the door with a quiet click. Because from here, it looks like my fake fiancé has been going through my private files, which suggests either corporate espionage or something more personal. Elara stood, documents clutched in her hands. Castellanos Technologies. Victor Castellanos. That's my father. The silence that followed was arctic. The company your father destroyed 15 years ago, Elara continued, her voice shaking with anger. The hostile takeover that gave him his first heart attack. The reason we lost everything. That's my father in a hospital bed right now, dying from the stress your family put him through. Dante's face went very still. When? 15 years ago. You destroyed. I was in college 15 years ago. His voice was quiet, controlled. That was my father's acquisition. I wasn't involved in Blackwood Industries until I graduated. Your name is on the company. Your legacy. Your inheritance built on people like my father. Yes. Dante moved to his bar, poured 2 glasses of scotch with steady hands. My father was a ruthless bastard who destroyed anyone in his way. I spent most of my 20s trying to be nothing like him. Apparently, I failed, since you're looking at me like I'm him. He handed her a glass. Elara didn't take it. Why did you choose me? Her voice cracked. Of all the women in Vancouver, why me? I told you. I investigate everyone. I knew you needed money. I knew you were smart, could handle my grandfather, wouldn't get attached. He paused. I didn't know about your father. I didn't make the connection between Victor Castellanos and Elara Castellanos. Different last name on your gallery registration. If I'd known. What? You wouldn't have offered. I would have paid you double. He set the scotch glasses down. Because clearly you have more reason than most to hate the Blackwood name. Elara laughed, a broken, bitter sound. So what happens now? You fire me from being your fake fiancé? Call security. Now you tell me what you want. The question hung in the air between them. What did she want? Revenge? Justice? Money? The lines had blurred somewhere between the society dinners and the quiet car rides home, between the practiced affection and the moments when Dante's mask slipped, and she saw something human underneath. I want my father to live, she said finally. I want his medical bills paid. I want the money your father took from him. Done. I want, she stopped. What? Dante pulled out his phone, typed rapidly. I'm transferring $200,000 to your account. That should cover your father's treatment and your debts. Consider it reparations for what my father did. I don't want your guilt money. Yes, you do. Pride won't pay hospital bills. He looked at her with those gray eyes that saw too much. You came here for money. Take it. Use it. Save your father. Then decide if you still want to destroy me. Why would you? Because you're right. My inheritance is built on people like your father. And maybe I'm tired of pretending that's okay. He moved to his desk, pulled out another folder. I've been doing some digging of my own. After I met you, I looked into the Castellanos Technologies acquisition. My father's methods were illegal. Bribery, insider trading, blackmail. I have evidence. Enough to posthumously destroy his reputation. and maybe get your father some legal recourse. He handed her the folder. I was going to tell you after the 6 weeks were up. But since you've already gone through my files, might as well skip the drama. Elara stared at the documents in her hands. Evidence. Justice. Everything she'd wanted. Handed to her by the man she'd planned to destroy. Why, she whispered. Because. Dante's mask finally cracked, showing something raw underneath. Because I'm tired of being my father's son. Because you looked at me like I was human before you knew my name. Because in 6 weeks of this fake relationship, you're the first real thing I've had in years. He laughed, a sound without humor. Pathetic, isn't it? I'm paying someone to pretend to love me, and it's still the most honest relationship I've ever had. Elara set down the folder. Set down her anger. Set down the revenge she'd been carrying like a weapon. Your grandfather's dinner is tomorrow, she said quietly. You don't have to come. The deal's off. Take the money. Get your father treatment. Forget you ever met me. What if I don't want to forget? Dante looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then you're crazier than I thought. Probably. Elara picked up one of the scotch glasses, drained it. But we made a deal. 6 weeks. I keep my promises. Even to men whose fathers destroyed my family. Elara. Tomorrow. 7 p.m. I'll need a new dress. That blue one makes me look washed out. She left before he could respond, the evidence folder tucked under her arm, her heart hammering against her ribs. The next morning, a delivery arrived at her apartment. Not a dress. An envelope. Inside, a bank statement showing a deposit of $200,000. And a note in Dante's sharp handwriting. Your father's bills are paid. Vancouver General confirmed. You don't owe me anything. But if you show up tonight, it won't be because of money. It'll be because you choose to. D. Elara sat on her apartment floor, surrounded by her unsold paintings and impossible choices, and cried for the first time in 5 years. She showed up at 7 p.m. wearing the blue dress, because spite was as good a reason as any. Dante opened the door himself, dismissed his staff with a wave. They stood in his penthouse, the city glittering below them like scattered diamonds. You came, he said. Don't let it go to your head. But something had shifted between them. The pretense was gone. What remained was more dangerous. Truth. They went to dinner at his grandfather's house. Elara played her part perfectly because it wasn't a part anymore. When she laughed at Marcus Blackwood's stories, it was real. When she defended Dante against his grandfather's barbs, she meant it. When Dante's hand found hers under the table, neither of them pulled away. Marcus watched them with those sharp, dying eyes and smiled. You love him, he said to Elara as Dante stepped away to take a phone call. Don't deny it. I've seen enough liars to know the truth. Elara's breath caught. I don't. Yes, you do. And he loves you. Which is hilarious because he hired you to fake it. Marcus laughed his rattling laugh. You think I didn't know? Dante forgets I still have friends everywhere. I knew about your arrangement within 24 hours. Elara's world tilted. You knew. Of course I knew. And I let it play out because I wanted to see what would happen. He leaned forward, voice dropping. My son Richard was a monster. Built an empire on broken people and broken promises. Dante spent his whole life trying to be different, trying to be better. But he was so busy being the opposite of Richard that he forgot to be human. Then you came along. And suddenly my grandson was investigating old acquisitions, making reparations, actually feeling something for another person. Marcus's smile was knowing. You think I care if you started as a hired actress? Some of the best love stories begin as transactions. This isn't a love story. Isn't it? Marcus gestured to where Dante stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his eyes constantly drifting back to Elara. That boy has spent 37 years building walls. You climbed them in 6 weeks. If that's not love, I don't know what is. Dante returned before Elara could respond. The dinner continued. But Marcus Blackwood's words echoed in her head like a song she couldn't unhear. They left after midnight. The drive back to Vancouver was silent, charged with everything neither of them was saying. He knew, Elara said finally. Your grandfather. About the arrangement. I know. Dante's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He told me at Christmas. Said he was enjoying watching me finally feel something. And you didn't tell me? I was afraid you'd leave. He said it simply without artifice. The money was already transferred. The deal was technically over. But you kept showing up. And I didn't want to question why. Elara stared out at the city lights bleeding past. I found something else in your files. Anonymous payments to Vancouver General Hospital. Large ones. Going back 6 months. Dante's jaw tightened. You've been paying my father's bills, Elara continued. This whole time. Before you even approached me. Why? Because I was investigating the Castellanos Technologies acquisition. And discovered your father was still alive. Still suffering from what my father did. And he pulled over abruptly, parking on a side street because he couldn't drive and say this. I couldn't bring back the 15 years he lost. But I could make sure he got the treatment he needed. You didn't know I existed then. No. I was just trying to be less of a bastard than my father. Dante turned to face her. Then I needed a fake fiancé. My investigator found you talented, desperate for money, perfect for the role. I didn't make the connection until later. By then I was already. Already what? Already falling for the woman I hired to pretend to love me. He laughed, the sound raw. How's that for pathetic? Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. I came here to destroy you. I spent 3 weeks planning how to ruin your life. I know. I would have done the same. But then you gave me everything I needed to destroy you and told me to take it. Because watching you destroy me would be less painful than watching you leave. They sat in the car on a quiet Vancouver side street, surrounded by strangers' lives and their own impossible truth. I don't know if I can forgive your father, Elara said finally. I can't forgive him either. But he's dead and we're alive and we get to choose what we do with that. I don't know if this is real, or if I'm just grateful or confused or... Dante reached across the console, his hand cupping her face with a gentleness that broke her. I don't know either. But I'd like to find out. No contract. No timeline. No money. Just 2 people trying to figure out if something that started as a lie can become true. Elara closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. Your grandfather was right. Some love stories do start as transactions. Is that what this is? A love story? She opened her eyes, met his gaze. I don't know yet. But I'm willing to find out. He kissed her then. Not for show, not for his grandfather, not for the deal. Just because they both needed to know if the chemistry between them was real. It was. Marcus Blackwood died 3 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep. His will stipulated that Dante's inheritance was contingent on marriage within 1 year. To Elara specifically. The crafty bastard, Dante said, reading the relevant clause for the 10th time. He changed it after meeting you. They sat in his lawyer's office, surrounded by leather-bound books and the weight of expectations. You don't have to, Dante started. I know. We can contest it. Break the will. I don't want you to feel obligated. Dante. Elara took his hand. Shut up. He shut up. For 28 years, she said slowly. I've been angry. At the world. At your family, at fate. I spent 6 weeks planning revenge against a man who turned out to be the first person in years to see me as something other than a failure. You're not a failure. I know. Because you looked at my paintings and saw rage and passion instead of amateur hour. Because you paid my father's bills before you even knew my name. Because you handed me the weapons to destroy you and asked me to choose mercy instead. She squeezed his hand. Your grandfather knew what he was doing. He gave us a choice. Walk away with nothing, or choose each other and get everything. It's not romantic. It's not traditional. But nothing about us is traditional. So what do we do? Elara pulled the evidence folder from her bag, the one Dante had given her, detailing his father's crimes. First, we use this. Get my father the legal recourse he deserves. Clear his name. Maybe get some compensation for what your family took. Already done. My lawyers filed yesterday. Show off. She smiled. Second, we convert my gallery into a nonprofit. Fund it with part of your inheritance. Help artists like me who are drowning. Our inheritance. Dante corrected. If we do this, it's ours. Equal partners. Third. She pulled out a small jewelry box, opened it. Inside, a simple silver band. Not the Cartier diamond he'd given her for show, but something real. We start over. No contract. No timeline. No performance. Just two damaged people trying to build something beautiful from the wreckage. Dante stared at the ring. You're proposing to me? I'm proposing we choose each other. Every day. Until one of us doesn't anymore. That's the least romantic proposal I've ever heard. You're a billionaire who hired a fake fiancé. You don't get to critique my romance. He laughed real warm alive. Then he took the ring from the box and slid it onto his finger. Yes. To all of it. The non-profit, the legal case, the choosing each other. All of it. Even though I came here to destroy you? Especially because of that. It means you're not with me for the money. I'm a little with you for the money. I know. I appreciate your honesty. They sat in the lawyer's office, hands intertwined. The future spread before them like a map of unmade choices. 6 months later, Elara stood in her new gallery, funded by the Blackwood inheritance, filled with art from artists the world had forgotten. Her father stood beside her, still recovering but alive, watching the opening night crowd with tears in his eyes. Your mother would be so proud, Victor Castellanos whispered. Across the room, Dante argued with a curator about wall placement, completely out of his element and perfectly happy. He caught Elara's eye and smiled. Not the calculated smile of Dante Blackwood, heir to an empire, but the real smile of a man who'd finally learned to be human. Elara smiled back. She thought about revenge and how it had brought her here, how she'd planned to destroy him, and ended up destroying every wall she'd built instead. How sometimes the best love stories started with the worst intentions. Her father squeezed her hand. That man loves you. I know. Do you love him? Elara watched Dante Blackwood, once her enemy, once her employer, now her partner, laugh at something the curator said. She thought about the choice she'd made that night in his car. To choose mercy over revenge. To choose possibility over pain. To choose tomorrow over yesterday. Yes, she said. Ido. And for the first time in her life, Elara Castellanos was exactly where she was meant to be. Follow for more stories where revenge leads to redemption, and the best love comes from the most unexpected places. Comment below. Would you choose revenge or forgiveness? Your choice might surprise you.